Alrighty. I think we're ready to get underway here. So first things first, the homework assignment was due last Wednesday. Hopefully you were able to keep up with that okay. If you're close, keep pushing. Keep working on it. Get that homework assignment in as soon as you can, and let us know what we can do to help you out. The next homework assignment is not due for a little bit. We got about 2.5 weeks or something like that, maybe 3 weeks before the next homework assignment is due. So we got some time before the next homework assignment is due. So please try to keep up if you can, and please let us know what we can do to help you out with that. Something else I just noticed that I thought maybe worth mentioning, I don't know. We're about 3/4 of the way through the class now, so only about 10 more classes left after this one, which seems kind of crazy to me to think about how far we've come. We're kind of nearing the home stretch, so that's pretty exciting. Yeah, so what that means for you all is that, as Nick has pointed out multiple times in the past, there's a follow-up class to this one called Liftoff that'll be starting up in, I don't know if they're going to try to start it in November or December before the end of the year, if they're going to wait until January after the first of the year. I forget what Nick said about that, but they're definitely going to be starting up a new version of Liftoff for y'all, and you're going to start getting more information about that as we get closer and closer to the end of the class. I mean, the last day of class, I believe, is on November the, oh, that's October. I want to say it's on the 9th. So we're like a little bit more than a month away from the end of class. It feels crazy. It feels crazy to think about that, but it's true. Just about a month left before this class is over. A little bit more than that. So keep sticking with it. Keep going strong. You're almost there. You're almost at the finish line. At least, you know, this finish line. There will be more finish lines for you to get to once this class is over. But yeah, certainly a big milestone coming up. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything that you would like to discuss before we hop into today's material, today's topic? Anything at all? Be happy to talk about homework assignments, scheduling stuff, what happens after this class. Question from Tom: in the videos for tonight's prep work, Chris always declared a list type, then initialized as an array list, and said you should always code to the interface when possible. Is this to make it easier to cast the array list as other implementations of the list interface? Basically, we should only be as specific as necessary when declaring types. Yes, actually, you kind of nailed it there, Tom. Something that we have not talked about a whole lot is that you mentioned lists, so I'm thinking about lists, right? There are different kinds of lists in the world. There's more than one object that implements the list interface. Array list is the one that we've been using, I think, most frequently, and actually is a very commonly used type of list, if not the most common in my own personal experience. But there are other types of lists out there, like a linked list class, or I'm trying to think of, well, there are many variants on linked lists, but anyhow, so what that allows you to do is change the implementation of the list depending on your circumstances. So, you know, if you decide that actually a linked list is a better fit than an array list for a particular task, it allows you to swap out that implementation without affecting the rest of your code, without affecting the rest of your stuff. Makes it an easy change to make. If you code it up as an array list everywhere, then if you want to change the type, you have to go find everywhere that you typed out array list and use a different type. So yes, that is one reason why it's good to code things to the interface to make it easy to swap implementations. I feel like a follow-up question that you haven't asked, but maybe you're thinking or typing right now, is why would we ever do that? Why would we ever swap implementations? So some implementations are going to perform better at others. For example, linked lists are known for being very easy to add new elements to, but not so great for retrieving elements out of the list. And when I say not so easy, I mean, I'm talking in terms of speed, in terms of how long it takes, how long those operations take. So a huge part of computer science that we've kind of hinted at here and there, but haven't actually sat you down and talked to you about formally, is speed. We care a lot about how long it takes to do stuff in computer science. That is one of our primary goals when coding, especially larger programs, is how long is it actually going to take? Because it's very possible to code something that takes too long, or takes forever, quite literally. And so that's something that we often think about, and being able to switch the implementations of your data structures is one common tool that's used. If I know that the list is going to be I'm going to add a lot of things to the list, but I'm not going to retrieve things out of it very often, then I might choose a list that's optimized for adding things to it. If I know that I'm not going to add things very often, but I am going to read out of the list a lot, I might choose a list that's optimized for reading values back out instead of adding things to it. So those are decisions that computer scientists make on a regular basis, and certainly something that you will find out sooner or later, I guess probably later, since it is not a major topic in this class. But for those of you who are interested in finding out more about this very important branch of computer science and programming, I would encourage you to Google terms such as time complexity or big O notation. Would be a very big rabbit hole for you to dive down. So yeah, I know that was kind of a long-winded answer to what seemed like a more simple question, but sorry about that. Is that the type of thing that would be covered in learning about data structures? Yes, absolutely. That is exactly right. Data structures and time complexity kind of go hand in hand. The structure that you use in your data goes a long way towards how efficient your program is going to be. Yes, goes a long way towards that. Yep. Yeah, I noticed that as well. Tom doing the hard work of reconciling. I mean, that happens in large part due to different versions of Spring behaving in different ways. That's actually one of the banes of being a computer science educator and recording videos on a particular topic, is that they come in, a month after you record the video and then change how it works, and then your video is out of date. It's very frustrating. It's happened to me more times than I can count. So yeah, just one of those things. So thank you to Tom for doing the legwork and figuring out what happened there. There probably will be more of that. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? Like Chris made these videos, I think about a year ago, and a lot can change in a year. I mean, just look at 2020, right? Like, holy crap. So, there'll probably be more little issues like that in the videos going forward. So yeah, please don't hesitate to bring those up when you see them, so that we can try to keep things as up to date as possible in the textbook. Any other questions or kudos or comments before we talk about some time leaf views today? That is our topic for today. So yeah, time leaf views solves, the big problem that I had the last time we talked about Spring, which was a little while ago, actually. It was at least a week ago, I think, where we were coding a lot of HTML as strings. I mentioned this during I know I mentioned it during the studio. I can't remember if I mentioned it during class as well. I did not enjoy doing that. I don't know how you all felt about doing that. I personally did not enjoy it. It did not feel good. I did not like it. And one of the big reasons why is because I think it kind of takes two separate tasks and puts them in the same place, right? Controllers are good for determining the behavior of an application, and views are good for, deciding how to display that information that your application needs to display. So we were kind of doing two things in the same spot, and it didn't feel good to me to do that. That's a big example of the single responsibility principle. You should be responsible for showing information or controlling behavior, but not both in the same file, ideally. And so views, the time leaf views that you saw in the prep work today, they go a long way towards, separating those two distinct things that are part of our application. So what I want to do first off is kind of, well, actually, I want to do the exercise with you. And the first part of the exercise is a great review of command line stuff, which we haven't talked about in quite some time. So I think that'll be a good review to start out with. And then we'll do the time leaf stuff as well. So I thought I had the exercises pulled up, but I guess I closed that tab. So let me pull it up again. Okay. So here's the exercise for today's class. And the first thing that they have you do is, whoops, that's the wrong class. I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong class. That's Wednesday's class. The first thing that they have you do is to go back in time. So here's a neat little trick. It's a great trick. One that I think you should take note of because it's super duper handy. We can look back in time in our Git repositories and actually go back in time to a commit that happened in the past. So if you've been making regular commits as you go through, you can practice this. If you haven't, you can see that they provided a repo for you to use to practice on, which is what I've actually got set up on my computer. And what we want to do is we want to go back in time. So we started this application with a static list of events, and we want to kind of go back in time and go back to that original version of the app and try a different task. Make our app look a little bit different than how Chris did in the videos. So first thing they tell us to do is to check out a new branch off of master called My Exercises Solution. How do I make a new branch? Here's something that we haven't talked about in like 2 months or so. Here I am on the command line. I'm in the repo. How do I make a new branch? Anybody remember? Did you have to Google it? Don't feel guilty if you did, or if you're furiously Googling it right now. I feel like there's probably some people doing that. Make directory, git checkout is getting closer. There it is. Checkout -B, and then the name of the branch that we want, they tell us to call it My Exercises Solution. It's okay if you had to Google that. Don't feel bad about it. I've had to Google that before as well. That's okay. It's not a problem. But it worked. Switch to a new branch, My Exercises Solution. The reason that they wanted us to switch to a new branch is that we're about to well, maybe we should pause for a second. What's a branch again? How do you describe a branch in a repository? This is a very abstract concept. I know that we spent a big chunk of time talking about it, though. It's an important concept. Like a copy to work on? Close. In a parallel universe. I think that parallel universe is important to understand, right? We are making a different timeline. In the videos, you created a version of this website that uses a list of events, right? We want to make a version of this application now that uses a hash map That's what they're going to tell us to do, a hash map of events. But we don't want to really mess up the list version. Like, there was nothing wrong with it. It was fine. We don't want to mess it up. We just want to make a separate version. So we're making a fork in the road. We're making two parallel versions of our application. One is going to be on this branch, and one is going to be on the new branch that we just created. That's the idea. And Kat, you're exactly right. It's a good way to isolate development. So whenever you all go off and get jobs as developers, one of the first things that they're probably going to tell you about when you get started coding, or you'll probably learn about this in Liftoff as well, as a matter of fact, is that anytime you add something to an application, you're going to make a new branch. All your new features are going to go into a new branch. And everybody does it a little bit differently. There are many different branching strategies, so you kind of have to see how they do things at a particular company. But it's a very common expectation of programmers to do. So a good little review. Glad that we're seeing more of this. Wish we would see more of this in more prep works. I actually think that we will going forward. We want to go back in time, though. We want to actually start back in time. So what we're going to do is use the log. And so here is the log. We're specifically looking for the commit that uses a static list. And if I go all the way down here at the bottom, I see initial commit with static event list. So this is the commit that we care about. This was done almost a year ago, November 21st, at 8:56 in the morning, 2019, which feels like, 100 years ago at this point. But we want to go back in time. We want to see what the code looks like at that point in time. So if I look at IntelliJ right now, it's basically got everything that happened in the videos, right? It's got all the templates down here. It's got the fragments. We're going to talk about all that stuff. It's got the CSS, right? All that stuff. But we want to go back in time. We want to undo all of that stuff and go back to the point where we had a static list so that we can kind of start fresh. And so what we're going to do in order to pull that off is look at this commit value right here. This very long sequence of letters and numbers. It's actually a number, even though it's got letters in it. It is a number. This is your commit ID, basically. And really, you don't need to worry about the entire number. Usually just the first, I don't know, few digits is plenty. So take note of those. And then what we can do is we can use this commit number in conjunction with the command that they show us here, git reset. Maybe I should just type it out. And then type in the first few digits of that commit number. 5 or 6 is probably plenty. And now, if I go back to IntelliJ, you'll notice, bloop, I don't know if you are looking at the screen, but a bunch of stuff just disappeared. And what am I left with? I'm left with, the original version of this application that used a static list of events right here, right? So we went back in time. We went back and found a previous version of this application. It's a really neat trick. It's a really good technique. When might you want to do this in real life? If you make a mistake. I made a commit and I accidentally deleted 100 files. Well, go back to the last one. It's all still there. You just need to tell it to go backwards to the last one. It's a very common thing. Or, maybe things have changed over time, but you want to look and see how things used to happen in the past. I don't know. It's a good way to go back and take a look and see how things are, see how things were looking in your past commits. So this is our starting point. If you're using your repository, your list of commits will look different than what I've got here. But if you're using the repository linked to in the exercises, you can follow these exact steps and end up at the same place as me. The repo in the exercises didn't have the version with the static list to work from? Sure it did. This is the one, this is the repo from the exercises. Yeah. I'm using that repo. I wonder if I don't know. I mean, maybe the log just needed to scroll down a little bit. Like, maybe you just have to scroll down a little bit. I don't know if that's the problem. I am on the master branch. I am on the master branch. It says, check out a new branch off of master. So I started in the master branch. Ah, is that where we got our wires crossed? How do you get out of this part? Type Q for quit. If you ever run into that situation, I find that just mashing both hands on the keyboard a few times can sometimes get you out of it. That was like half a joke, but also a lot real. Like, I've literally done that. So once you end up in the right place, or you know, if you're having trouble getting to the right place, then maybe just kick back and relax and enjoy the show for a little bit. We're gonna go ahead and start trying to knock out this exercise and get as far as we can with the time that we got left. They want us to comment out this previous code and display all events, which is all this stuff right here. We're gonna comment it out. IntelliJ has a hotkey for commenting out sections of code. I don't remember what it is, so I'm gonna guess, and maybe I'm right. Oh yeah, there we go. It's Control/. That's what I thought it was. It works in reverse as well. So if I highlight out a commented block of code and I hit Control/ again, it uncomments it. So that's a cool little thing, right? To be aware of. And they want us to redo this, this time with a hash map instead of a list. So we're gonna make an events hash map. Okay, and just like we saw Chris doing, and just like Tom was asking at the top of the class, here you'll see they don't call it a hash map right away. They call it a list, which is the interface, and hash map has an interface as well. It's just called map. And so anytime we're dealing with maps, we have to think, well, what's the difference between a list and a hash map? This is a good review. I can't turn down an opportunity for a good review question. Key value pairs, yeah, key value pairs. So what's the type of the key and what's the type of the value? Or what is the key and what is the value? So key is a string and the value is, I mean, if we look at the instructions here, it says this allows us to add descriptions to our events. All right, are descriptions the keys or the values here? Ah, this gives a little bit more. Yeah, description's the value, name is the key. Those both sound like strings to me, right? Events equals new hash map. IntelliJ is mad because we need to import some stuff, right? So we can do that. Alt-Enter. Alt-Enter. We've now imported some stuff. And now they want us to add some events and descriptions to our hash map. All right, how do I put things into a hash map? Yeah, I just said it. My brain couldn't think of another word. It's so drilled into me at this point. We put stuff in here, so I'm gonna reuse some of these events, right? Code with pride. And the description would be, you know, LGBT friendly coding meetup, right? Events.put strange loop. I actually don't know about this one as much. Loops that are strange. I don't know. I don't know much about that event. Events.add Apple WWDC. Oops, not add. We're doing a hash map, not a list. Sorry. Apple, what is that? Worldwide Developers Conference. Event for people who like overpriced computers. Okay. And we're now at the point, and that's good enough. We've got our events. And now we can talk about the actual TimeLeaf business, the TimeLeaf fund. They give us a big hint here using these two TimeLeaf attributes, block and each. So let's go take a peek at the template that we've got. Or actually, before we do that, how do I tell this code what template I want to use? How do I tell this code what template I want to use? You can see it's mad at me right now. It says missing return statement. So I need a return statement here. And the return statement is actually specifying which template I want to use, right? We can actually see the commented out one here, return events/index, which is probably what we want here as well, right? But what does this actually mean? This is a path. This is a path. Go to the events folder, find the template called index, and use that. Use that template. Use that template. But how do I get this hash map into that template? Because that's something that we're going to need in the template in order to display things effectively, right? How do I get this hash map into the template? Again, we can look at the code that we had up here before. It refers to something called a model. So we're actually going to talk a lot about models on Wednesday, but here's a very, bare bones introduction to the concept of a model right now. Right now, you can think of a model as just the data that we want to display. And so we're going to add this hash map to our model so that it gets passed to the template, and we can then display that information. Add attribute. We give it a name. Here's something that kind of trips. Oh, I used the wrong one. Hello? Here's something that kind of trips people up when learning about templates and TimeLeaf and things like that. You'll notice here I named this events as a string and this is events, right? This is actually referring to the variable. This is referring to the variable that we're using in our code, whereas this is a name that's going to be applied to this variable that we can then use to refer to it in the template. So this events is referring to the variable name that we see in the template, right? This events is referring to what we see in the code. If it helps kind of make things easier, right? You can see that they don't have to be the same. In fact, naming them the same thing can be a little bit confusing to some people. If you're one of those people, no shame in naming them two different things, especially when you're just starting out and learning about stuff, right? This is referring to a variable in my code. This is referring to a name that I want to use inside of my template. All right. I get that question a lot. So I just wanted to take a moment to point that out. And if I get that question again, it's totally fine. I totally get it. It is a little bit confusing. Don't feel bad about asking about it again if you need more help understanding it. So what's it called when I actually take these variables, add it to the model, and then return this template and show it to you on the screen? We have a name for that when we actually fill out the template and show it to somebody. Anybody remember what that's called? We did this back in the Angular section as well. It's a word that rhymes with blender, fender. Yeah, we're rendering the template. That's right. So this return statement, if I was talking to somebody about this, a coworker or somebody else talking to them about this code, I would say, oh yeah, add this to the model and then render the template. Like that's what I would call. That's what I would say. I'd say render the template. If it was just in the template folder, it would be fine to return index. If you're referring to this one here, yes, it'd be fine to just return index. The templates folder always needs to be called templates. I'm actually not 100% sure about that. I feel like there's probably a way that you could use a different folder that's not called templates if you wanted to. I think you would have to include some kind of a directive like this, an annotation like this, to tell it where your templates are in order to pull that off. I'm not 100% certain on that. It's more of a gut feeling. A little bit of Googling might be able to help you out with that. But in general, if you have it in a folder called templates, that's going to work. So no problems there. Yeah, well, I mean, it is definitely looking for a folder called templates. Unless you tell it otherwise, it's going to assume that it's in this folder called templates. So that is an assumption that they're making. All right, cool. So we've made our hash map. We have added it to the model. We've told it to render the template. And now we have to go and update our template because this was written to render a list of events, whereas now we're rendering a hash map of events. And so we can actually probably reuse some of this. In fact, the only thing that we don't really need is all the list item stuff, but the rest of the stuff we could probably, this stuff we could probably reuse a little bit. So let's talk about what this line of code is actually doing for a second. And I'm going to skip th block for a second and go to th each. What does th each do for us in time leaf? That's a loop. Yeah, that's how we do a loop, a for each loop, exactly. So the way I would read this if I was describing this code to somebody is for each event in events. That's how I would pronounce that in English, right? For each event in events. What about th block? That's a little bit more of an abstract / confusing topic. What does th block do for us? This is one that I think takes a little bit longer to wrap your head around. Kind of like a div tag. It's like brackets, a block of code. I mean, you're all sort of correct. Yeah, it's a block of code. It's, if I have something that needs to be repeated, but I don't want to repeat a div tag, right? If I put div here, then I'd see a div tag get repeated over and over and over and over again. And maybe I don't want a bunch of div tags, right? Maybe that's not what I need. If I need repetition, but I don't necessarily want, this, whatever this tag is, to be repeated a bunch of times, then I can use a block. It's a tag that exists only for the purposes of rendering the template, and then it goes poof and disappears once the template has been rendered. The tag does not actually exist. It only exists for the purpose of rendering the template. Or in other words, you would only ever use th block if you wanted to use a th each or a th if or something along those lines, right? If you're not using one of these constructs in addition with th block, you're just, you know, kind of being a little bit weird. That's not very nice. I shouldn't say it like that. But that's, you know, that's generally what th block is for. It gives you the ability to use th each or th if without having an additional tag coming along for the ride. In other words, if you rendered the page and inspected the source, which we'll do in just a moment, you would not actually see a tag here. Because th block does its job. It does the repetition or whatever you tell it to do, and then it just goes poof and disappears like it was never there. So I'm going to get rid of this unordered list. And they want us to use a table instead. Tables are very interesting because back in the 90s, tables were like everywhere, right? Like tables were used for all kinds of stuff, all over the place. And then in the mid 2000s, early 2010s, people were like, tables suck. You should never use tables. You should only use divs. Never, ever, ever use tables again. I never want to see tables. And then for whatever reason, like 5 or 6 years ago, people were like, yeah, tables are fine. Tables are cool. So I don't know what happened or why. I guess it's just sort of another illustration of how humans can be a bit fickle sometimes. But, oh, that's not the kind of table I want. I should be a bit more specific, shouldn't I, Google? But as a little bit of a refresher on tables, we start with a table tag. We have a tr tag, which is used for the table row. TH stands for table header. So if we want to have headers, we can do that. And then we'll have, you know, rows with data. TD stands for table data. Okay. So of this, you know, we have to identify what's the stuff that needs to be repeated. What is the stuff that we need to repeat in this particular situation? We need to repeat probably a row for each element in our, or is it a TD? Sorry, my brain just froze. I need to reboot it. A TD, or a couple of TDs for each event, right? A couple of TDs for each event. Actually, I think we need a whole row though, don't we? Probably. Well, we could try it out a couple ways anyway. Let's see what happens. We don't need to repeat this, right? Table / table. That definitely doesn't need to be repeated. If I want table headers, which I think is probably a good idea, name, description. Right. I don't need to repeat that. That only needs to happen once, right? But then down here, this is where things need to get, oh, whoops, that shouldn't have been TD. That should have been TR, my fault. This is where things need to start getting repeated, right? TR, TD, and then I have 2 values now, right? One for the name and one for the description. How do I retrieve those and put them here? How do I put that stuff so that it's going to show up inside of this tag? How do I access that information? So anytime we want to access a value from a variable in Timeleaf, we're going to use this $ syntax. But we need th:\text. And now we can use the $ syntax, right? Inside of the th.text. Why couldn't I have just done $ bracket here? What would have happened if I had just tried to do it here? Default text, like I literally would have seen this show up on the page, right? It's a classic, it's another classic Timeleaf, you know, trap to fall into. I've done that, I don't even know how many times. I'm gonna do it again at some point in my life. I already know that I'm gonna do it again. If you want to use this $ bracket syntax, it has to be part of a Timeleaf attribute. And the attribute that we want in this case is Timeleaf text. So now I can do, event dot key is going to get me the key, which we said is the name. And then in the next one, I can do a very similar th text for event dot value. Am I oh, I'm accidentally put it outside of the tag. I didn't mean to do that. All right. Close the block, close the table. This might work. Let's see. Let's see if this works. I'm gonna run it and see what we screwed up or what we didn't screw up. Maybe it works. We may want default text, it's possible. I didn't put any in. We might want it. So these time leaf directives, right, feel pretty similar to some of the Angular directives that we saw back at the end of Unit 1. They are a little bit different, but they do feel pretty similar. And that's a good thing, right? We can remember back to our Angular knowledge and apply it then to the time leaf stuff that we're now working on. It's not called hello anymore, it's called events. Here we go. It worked. Here's something interesting, right? Here's something a little bit interesting. In the Java code here, you'll notice I put in code with pride, strange loop, and then the Apple event, right? But then on the page, it showed up code with pride, the Apple event, and then the strange loop. Why did it do that? Why did it swap the order on me? Is that adding to the beginning of the hash? Ah, will. Yeah. And so am hash maps are unordered. Hash maps do not have an order. Lists have an order. Arrays have an order. Hash maps do not have an order. There is no guarantee that you'll get stuff out of a hash map in the same order that you put it in. Java will not make that guarantee to you. Sometimes you might, but you can't guarantee that that's going to be the case. If you care about order, you got to use something, you got to use a data structure that cares about order, like a list. Yeah. Nice little tie into our conversation about data structures that we used at the beginning of class. Great. So we got there. I want to, well, two things. One, if I look at view page source, you'll notice that that th block tag, as we talked about, it doesn't actually exist. It's not a real tag. It's like a pseudo tag, right? It exists long enough to perform the repetition and then gets out of the way, disappears, right? It's gone. I wonder if we even need it though. Like, I know the instructions told us to use it, but I'm just a little curious as if it's even strictly required. Like, why couldn't I have just made this a tr tag? I'm going off the beaten path a little bit here. Why couldn't I have just done this? Is there any difference between this and what we just did? I guess we're about to find out, right? I guess we're about to find out. Did I have a second one? Oh, whoops, thanks. Thank you, thank you. I don't know if I actually needed to restart it, but I did. I don't think there's any difference. I don't think there's any difference between what we did and what I've got up here now. So, you know, simplifies the code a little bit, right? Makes the code a little bit simpler. That's not a bad thing. Not that the way that we had it before was bad either. It clearly got us where we wanted to go, which we certainly care about. I just thought it would be neat to show off an alternative approach. Maybe some of you discovered that on your own as you were working on the exercise as well. Let's take a look at what's next. Fragments. Let's talk about fragments. What a great topic. So we're going to use a fragment to store an address. And we can look up, you know, launch code Mentor Center, 4811 Delmar Boulevard. I wish I could go there right now. Oh man, it's just making me I got the COVID blues now. Why did I do this? Anyhow, I want to set up a fragment. Where do I put my fragments? Where do I put my fragments? Where do those go? Templates? Can we be a little bit more specific than that? I mean, they're going to go into a timeleaf file, right? Called fragments.html, something like that, right? Sure, I'll add it to Git. Excuse me. Do I need all this stuff in my fragments file? Is this all necessary? Not really. Fragments just need to contain the bit of code that I want to be repeated. So the thing that I want to be repeated in this case is what? The address, which is, you know, launch code Mentor Center, 4811 Delmar. Everybody's checking their Gchat right now. It was me. It was me. It was not yours. There we go. How do I mark that I want to use this as a fragment? How do I mark that this is something that I want to use as a fragment? Inside of this tag, I'm going to put in the th fragment. Is that it? Am I good to go? Namespace th is not bound. It doesn't know what I'm talking about, in other words. Is that a problem? I have to give it a name. Address. Right. Here we go. What happened? Why are you angry at me, computer? What did I do wrong? Anybody know? Don't I need a doc type? It's not connected to timeleaf. I took out all that stuff. Well, I think I might need this, right? I think I might need to tell it that it's part of timeleaf, right? Oh, okay. Okay. So I could take out most of that stuff, but it's still good to make sure to tell it that this is actually a timeleaf piece of timeleaf code. Yep. Awesome. And now what I can do is I can go back to my events template here, and I can add in a third tag, and we're just going to say that all of these are taking place at the Launch Code Mentor Center, which is maybe not true, but let's assume that it's true. How do I then insert that fragment into this TD for all of my events? How do I insert that fragment? We're going to use a replace, th::replace. equals, and then how do I refer to it? I say, first thing I say is fragments. That's the name of the file, right? And then 2 colons, and then the name of the fragment that I want, which is address. So go to the fragments file, find the fragment called address, and put that thing here. Put it here. That's what we're saying. Okay, let's try it. Let's see if it worked. If it worked, I would expect to see that address, you know, in the 3rd column. I didn't put a header up here, though. I should probably do that before I go refresh the page. I don't actually know if I need to keep restarting this. I kind of feel like I don't, but just in case. All right, refresh. Close. Close, but no cigar, right? I see it appear 3 times. That's good. Let's look at the source and see what happened. Oh, it's a div. It's a div. This is an interesting little piece of behavior with fragments, right? This was covered a little bit in the textbook, and here we see it in action. In the fragments file, I have it specified as a div. Fragments file, I have it specified as a div. In the events here, I actually replaced it inside of a TD tag, a different type of tag than what was in the fragments file, right? The textbook talked about that a little bit. You can actually insert a fragment even if the tag types don't match up, which we did here. But which tag wins? Well, it's the one from the fragment. So that's a problem, right? That's an issue. It's one that we can fix. It's a fixable problem. If it didn't like that, let's just insert a div instead. Something like that. Leave the TD tag out of the equation. Run your replace on a div tag instead inside. And let's see if I can refresh this page here. No? Do I have to restart it? I didn't think that I did, but maybe I did. Maybe I do. Oh, you changed the fragment to a TD? So that thought had crossed my mind as well. And once I make sure this is working, there we go. That worked. That worked. That thought crossed my mind as well. The reason that I didn't do it, is because by putting this in a TD tag, you're now saying that, okay, I'm only using this address inside of a table. What if I don't always want to use this address inside of a table? What if I want to use this, you know, just anywhere on my website, even if whether it's in a table or not? I feel like that could be problematic, perhaps. So I wanted to leave this as a div and just insert it into the table. That was my reasoning. If you don't think you're ever going to use this outside of a table, then there's certainly no problem using a TD tag here. So yeah, I can certainly see how that would get you to where you're going as well. All right. There is one more part of this exercise, and we have just enough time to do it, I think. We're going to add some CSS to try and style our spreadsheet. So CSS is an example of static content, right? Static content. So we need to make our CSS, and then we need to connect it to our page. We need to connect some static content to our page. So first things first, I'm going to make some CSS. Where am I going to put that CSS at? Kind of gave that answer away a little bit, didn't I? I'm going to make a folder called static in my resources folder. And I'm going to make another file called style.css. Sure. And then in here, I can decide what I want to do style-wise. As those of you who know me, which all of you kind of do know me now, know that I'm not a huge fan of CSS, so I'm just going to keep things simple. It said it wanted tables to be centered, right? So how do I do that? Is it like align? I can't even spell align. I don't even know if that's the right way to do it. That message, by the way, at the top, you know, CSS files are supported by IntelliJ Ultimate. That's a scary message that you can ignore. They're just trying to get you to buy IntelliJ Ultimate, which is actually not a bad thing to have if you think you're going to be using IntelliJ a lot. But if you go get a job programming Java, your boss will buy it for you. So don't feel like you have to buy it yourself. You can wait for your employer to buy it for you if they use IntelliJ. But most professional Java developers are using IntelliJ. It is by far the most common IDE for Java development. There are others in the world, but IntelliJ is like the go-to. Anyhow, all right, I've made this CSS style sheet. How do I actually get it into my page? I got a link to it. Usually we do that up in the head, right? I put in a link tag. And then if this were regular programming, I'd say, you know, href such and such. Gosh, I cannot even type. Where's my dang equals key? You know, I'd put in something like this. This is how we used to do it, right? Do I have to put in type equals style sheet? Oh, is it rel? I don't remember. You tell how much CSS work I'm doing. Here we go. Link rel style sheet. There it is. Yeah, I had it. I had like half of it, and then I made it worse. Sorry. All right. This is how we learned how to do it at first. I'm not ashamed. Don't judge me. This is how we learned how to do it at first, but this won't work. Why won't this work? Why won't this work? We could even type this, and this still won't work. Why not? Why won't this work? Why won't this work? The time leaf syntax is different. That's a true statement. I don't think that's an explanation of why this particular approach won't work, though. Think about it this way. This is a template. How many times can I use this template if I want to? As many times as I want. So in my controllers, I could have, you know, 100 different methods, and I could use this template for 50 of them if I want to. And those 50 methods that use this, are they all going to be at the same address? Maybe, but probably not. They're probably not going to be at the same address. They're going to be at different routes, right? I could render the same template on 50 different routes if I wanted to, 50 different addresses on my website if I wanted to. And is this address, oops, wrong one. Is this address going to be correct for all 50 different routes? Probably not. Probably not. So it's not an easy thing to do to link to something when the template is being used in many different places trying to link to some static content. That is why the time leaf tag exists. It's basically saying, all right, we recognize the fact that it's hard to link to static content when you're reusing the same template in 100 different places. We've made this attribute for you so that we can do the work to figure that out, right? We'll figure out what to put here. We'll figure out what actually needs to go here when you render the template based on where this template is being rendered and what the route is and where this content is. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Let's see if it actually worked. My table should hopefully be centered now. Oh gosh, oh no. That's okay. An error happened during template parsing. So let's see if we can figure out what this error message is telling us. Some of you probably already know where I screwed up, but let's see if we can figure out what's happening from this error message. Could not parse as expression static style.css. So that's at least a clue that there's something wrong with this, right? That there's something wrong with this. I don't think I need the static, do I? Let's try it again. All right, so it's broken, but or it's not broken, I fixed it, but my CSS doesn't work. Is it text align? CSS center table. How to center a table. Margin left, margin right, auto. There we go. One more time, maybe the last time for today. All right. I think it looks terrible, but the point is that I got the CSS to work, right? The CSS is in effect. And from there, I would spend time crafting that CSS to make the page look however I wanted it to look. Okay. I'll pause here. What questions do you all have? Hopefully that was a nice little tour of timely views. We're going to be using fragments quite a bit in this class. We're also going to be using this quite a bit, adding things to the model and then rendering it in the templates using each tags and if tags. We're going to be using that quite a bit. TH text, we're going to see those a lot going forward. So does anybody have any questions about that stuff before I, excuse me, get out of your way, turn you loose on the studio? All righty. Well, that does it for my time. It is now studio time, so I'm gonna cut you loose, go meet up in your small groups, your studio groups, and then we'll meet back here to do a studio review at the same time that we always do, starting around 8 o'clock. So I'll see you all in a little bit. Have a good one. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.